Good evening. It's nice that it is 6 p.m. on Tuesday, March 10th, 2026, and it is still light outside. Haven't quite adjusted to daylight savings, or as Dustin Hoffman says in Rain Man, 10 o'clock daylight savings, 10 o'clock daylight savings. My internal clock is still a little bit fucked up, but we're going to record an episode here. I'm on my way home. It's very, very much stop and go traffic on the Big Lie, the Long Island Expressway heading eastward. But I wanted to talk about a film which I have mentioned in passing a couple of times, but I haven't spent more than 45 seconds on it total. It's going to slide into the Guilty Pleasure series, although this film I do not believe was intended to be a Guilty Pleasure movie. It is a Western. It is a revisionist Western in the manner of Unforgiven, or at least that's what it intends to do. I don't know that it necessarily succeeds in that regard. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. There are certain moments where it kind of hits the target. But this is a great entertainment, brilliantly acted by the entire cast, and you have a fantastic filmmaker who went on to greater glory in Sam Raimi. And this film was released in February of 1995. I recently mentioned that year with regards to Outbreak, a film which came out in March of 1995. So this film, about a month earlier, Sam Raimi's Western, a kind of a combination, a combination of Unforgiven and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, to throw a pair of Clint Eastwood Westerns at you, The Quick and the Dead. Now, in February of 1995, some of you like that I give you a little bit of personal history. I was in my second semester at New York University Film School, and I took a class which was cross-referenced with like liberal arts, humanities, and cinema studies. So whichever one we needed to fulfill our academic requirements to graduate, this class could be a cinema studies class, because the professor was a tenured professor in the cinema studies department at the time, Toby Miller. What a brilliant guy he was. But also, it didn't just focus on movies. There was a lot of other stuff that we got into, and enough of it that it was, as I say, cross-reference. But Toby Miller was a guy who wrote on the James Bond series, and he also wrote a number of academic papers on Westerns. And we didn't see a Western with him in this class. It was called Popular Culture and Everyday Life, one of my favorite classes that I took at New York University. But he was a Sam Raimi fan. He was a bit of a fanboy for the Army of Darkness, well, the Evil Dead movies, the first iteration of Evil Dead movies with Bruce Campbell. And obviously, I doubt that Bruce Campbell is watching this podcast or listening to it, but best wishes to him as he battles cancer. But Sam Raimi was a filmmaker that Professor Miller loved, and he saw The Quick and the Dead the night it opened, and then we had class with him a couple of days later, and he talked about it, and he could not stop raving about the camera work, the artistry, the performances, and some of the what appeared to be optical effects. There was a lot of stuff in the film that he really couldn't explain. He didn't want to give too much away, but he was an enormous fan of The Quick and the Dead, and I hadn't really been planning on seeing it. I was going to the movies a lot in this era. Just Cause, another movie from right around this time, February 1995. I think Just Cause may have come out the same weekend as Quick and the Dead, well, certainly within a couple of weeks. So I was going to the movies an awful lot. Candyman, Farewell to the Flesh, another one that came out in this particular, kind of time frame. I saw it on his recommendation, even though there were some local critics. I think the Daily News gave it 3.5 stars. The Post liked it. Newsday wasn't really that sold on it, but let's go see a movie. And I mentioned the incredible all-star cast. So on the outer edges of the story, you have two great supporting actors, kind of what you would call genre staples, in Keith David and Lance Henriksen. So those are two of the modest names. I mean, Keith David, friends with Kurt Russell, The Thing, and of course, They Live with Roddy Piper. Put these glasses on or start eating that trash can. We had a great line reading from Roddy Piper. Put these glasses on or start eating that trash can. But the cast from top to bottom, Sharon Stone is the ostensible hero. And the reason why I say ostensible hero, she has the most screen time. She plays a kind of woman with no name. Again, it's supposed to be like a Clint Eastwood Man with No Name, where he has a past and she has a past, but it's not what we think. And as much as the Man with No Name in the Leone Dollars trilogy, there are moments where he's not really that great of a guy. He does have a moral compass. It's important to note that. And the character that Sharon Stone plays in The Quick and the Dead, her name is Ellen. And there were some people that were saying we shouldn't have given her a name. Even if she has a past, she should just be the woman with no name. But Sharon Stone is an actress that I am a significant fan of. Her track record, her history, the things that she said about working within Hollywood and trying to rise as she did so beautifully in the 80s with small roles in movies like Action Jackson and Alan Quatermain with the late Richard Chamberlain, and then her kind of star-making role already in her early 30s with Arnold in Total Recall, where she is just absolute fire. And, you know, I could say that Kate Beckinsale, you want me to say she's as good an actress or better than Sharon Stone? Sharon Stone's handle on the character of Laurie was phenomenal in Total Recall. I mean, you could say that because it's Verhoeven, the filmmaker, and they just had a better script to work with than, I'm speaking of the Total Recall reboot, where Kate Beckinsale basically plays the character, or they almost split the character in half. It was a little bit weird the way they did that. Anyway, Sharon Stone is the lead, and the action all filters through her, but this is a problem with the movie. She's like the fifth most interesting character in the film. That is a big problem, because also in the cast, in the kind of villainous role, you have the always fire and just ingenious, speaking of, Gene Hackman. And, you know, Gene had won the Oscar for supporting actor. I mentioned Unforgiven 3 years prior, from the film's released in 1992. The irony is the character that Gene plays in Quick and the Dead, he's even worse. This guy is actually way worse than Sheriff Bill Daggett. Bill Daggett, depending on circumstances, almost could be seen as a decent sheriff. It's just that the events of the story of Unforgiven make him look, I mean, he's a horrendous guy, but he does have at least some idea of law and order, and he's not, it's my way or the highway. The character that he plays in Quick and the Dead of John Herod is every angle he's irredeemable. He's not even building a house. You know, that's the great moment, as spoiler alert, Unforgiven. This isn't right. I was building a house. As if you're building a house, that means that you're not responsible for the rest of the, you know, disgusting, corrupt activities that you take part in. So Gene Hackman plays a guy who pretty much runs this town. Great name for a town, Redemption. And so he's not even the sheriff. He's just the richest man in the town, and he runs the town. And Hackman just is relishing this character, knowing that he has another great villain to play. So you have Gene Hackman stealing every scene he's in, except when he's in a scene opposite either Russell Crowe, who was rising like a bullet train at this point in history. I mean, what a dynamic, incredible talent. Russell Crowe plays a character called Preacher in this film. And you also have another guy you might have heard of named Leonardo DiCaprio, who, this is pre-Titanic, pre-Romeo and Juliet. This was Leo during his Basketball Diaries days. He'd already been an Oscar nominee, so he was not unknown to the masses. And DiCaprio plays a character who we think, or he thinks, is Hackman's character's son. He has the same last name, but there's a little bit of antagonism between Leo's character and Gene Hackman's character. Gene Hackman's character really doesn't want to claim this kid as his own. We're not really sure. And that's a little bit of the revisionism of this movie, the way that situation plays out. But we have the idea that Sharon Stone's character of Ellen has some sort of personal grudge against Herod. And the movie centers around a series of duels. You know, Ridley Scott made a famous movie in the 70s, one of his best movies on his way up, The Duelists, with a very weird casting, Keith Carradine and Harvey Keitel. Man, I love Harvey Keitel, but he's so miscast in The Duelist. It's almost like they did it on purpose. But this film, Quick and the Dead, centers on two gunfighters. One challenges another, and let's fucking go. And sometimes the characters are going to end up getting killed, but not always. You know, you could get shot in the leg and tap out. I forgot the mechanics, but it's something like that. Sharon Stone's character has a vendetta of some sort with John Herod. It could be seen, speaking of, you know, Sergio Leone, who did the Man with No Name movies with Clint. In Once Upon a Time in the West, character played by Charles Bronson, spoiler alert, we go the whole movie wondering why this guy keeps playing this busted up tune on a harmonica. Why is he playing this tune? It doesn't even sound like music. What's going on here? And it turns out that he has a very particular issue with Henry Fonda's Frank. Now that you use my name, I would say that this film doesn't really need Sharon Stone to have a particular issue with Gene Hackman's Herod, but she does. And the problem for Sharon is that her character is just not that interesting, and DiCaprio's character is, and Gene Hackman's character is, and Lance Henriksen and Keith David as a couple of gunfighters, as I say, on the outer edges of the story. They are such interesting, intense performers that their characters seem more interesting. Sharon plays this very laconic, very Clint Eastwood, very quiet and taciturn. She comes across like a loner. She don't need no man. You know, the Al Pacino. She don't need no man. But it's a problem when the movie is centered around her and she's just not that interesting. You know, and I'm reminded of one of the great moments of Jack Nicholson's career in the movie Wolf, where he's having a little bit of a schmooze with Michelle Pfeiffer as the daughter of his boss, or former boss, played by another late great Christopher Plummer. And Jack is schmoozing with Michelle Pfeiffer, who is, I mean, we could say it, just impossibly attractive woman. And she's not really talking to him with any respect, even though he worked for her father for years. So he says, you know, I think I figured you out. You're beautiful. And you think that men are only interested in you because you're beautiful. And he goes into this whole spiel where the problem that Michelle Pfeiffer has is that she's really a great-looking woman. But underneath all that beauty, she's not very interesting. In a way, you're your own problem, as he so eloquently puts it. And then she says, sorry, wrong line, but spoiler alert again, they end up having sex. So in this film, it's a weakness of the story that Sharon's character is just not that interesting. There's nothing wrong with her performance, but she has to play the character so tight, you don't look forward to seeing her on screen. You look forward to the other people. And when I mention how the other characters are more interesting, here's an irony. Russell Crowe's character of Preacher, there is nothing, if you were to look at the screenplay, you could find this online. There is nothing interesting whatsoever about the character of Preacher. Nothing. The character is memorable because Russell Crowe is Russell Crowe. Because whatever he does with his eyes, with his face, with his body language, with his vocal inflections, it feels like there's more going on with the character of Preacher than there is. And his character is actually the best gunfighter, the best gunslinger in the entire movie, including Gene Hackman's Herod. But he's dealing with substandard equipment. There's a really great scene. It's kind of a little bit played for laughs. DiCaprio's character has this little gun shop that I assume that Hackman put him up and, you know, gave him a chance to have this business. I don't remember the exact mechanics, but something like that. And Russell Crowe needs a gun. He needs a gun to take part in this contest. So he gives him the gun is so broken down. It's like a 200-year-old Colt. And it is, you couldn't even get this gun to fire. And it's going to be a miracle if Russell Crowe could even get a shot off. That's how bad this gun is. I mean, that was one of the best scenes in the movie. But Russell is so good. He is so good. When I think of this movie, I think of him. I think of him as Preacher. And I don't know that this necessarily got him LA Confidential, which was, you know, cast probably about 2 years later. But this movie opened eyes. He had been in another film right around this time called The Sum of Us. I think he was in Romper Stomper. That was a big one for him, an independent film, got him noticed. But Russell Crowe is so good in this film. He marks himself as a talent that you don't even know what it is that he's doing, but he's doing something that is not normal. And he's the character that you remember first and foremost, even though it is an underwritten nothing part. There were just those moments in film where an actor takes a minor role. James Gandolfini, speaking of late great, in Get Shorty, the character of Bear. Character is dead on the page. He's just Delroy Lindo's bodyguard. But somehow, because it's James Gandolfini, same year also, 1995, good year, right? That character is the most memorable in the film, next to John Travolta's Chili Palmer, because of the skill of the performer, just making lemonade. Forget lemons, he's making lemonade out of thin air. So, The Quick and the Dead has these gunfights, and Raimi, being a very clever and kind of canny filmmaker, he doesn't want it to get dull that we're just basically seeing the same thing repeated again and again with different people. He shoots using weird filters, strange angles, and there are moments where it almost appears that some shots are sweetened with CGI. The fact that I can't tell you that for certain is a credit to Raimi and what he's able to do here. So the movie does have a bit of a conventional wrap-up with the vendetta, and it doesn't go necessarily exactly how you expect, but it also doesn't reinvent the wheel in the way that Unforgiven did and does. I love this movie for the performances, for the sheer entertainment value, and the fact that Raimi just goes for it. He just goes for it. And before I forget, this film is not a box office hit. The worldwide gross was under 50. And I think it cost between 30 and 35, so no matter how you slice it, I mean, it wasn't like a bomb, but it just didn't connect with audiences in the United States. Maybe people were tired of Westerns. You had to add Tombstone and the Wyatt Earp movie, with Kevin Costner. But it must be said also that Sharon Stone, she's a great lady. I mean, I almost feel like she's a grand dame of cinema now, because she's been through so much, with the health problems and some of the BS that she had to deal with in her early days of the business, as a woman who carried herself a certain way, who was certainly very much objectified. Again, no cap, it's a real thing, it happened. And Basic Instinct, where she's so solid in that film, there were people saying maybe she could get an Oscar nomination. But Sharon Stone is always a little bit unlike others in terms of how she processed fame and what she was willing to do with her kind of capital, if you will, when she had the opportunity. So after she signed on to do The Quick and the Dead, the role of the kid, his name, he goes by Fee. I don't know what that is short for, but his official name in the credits is Fee Herod, the Hackman's son, again. But he's just usually known informally as the kid. Well, Sharon Stone, after she signed on, was convinced, hey, if you can get this kid, this Leonardo DiCaprio, we saw him in Gilbert Grape. However she explained it, she wanted DiCaprio. See if you can get him. And the producers, the powers that be at the studio, I think this was the top guys at the studio, said something to the effect of, well, I mean, we'd love to have him. He's great, but it's not in the budget. We don't really have an extra $1 million for this role. No offense, but you're right. If we could get him, for sure, but we're not going to spend an extra $1 million. Now, the funny part is that they were right. They had a very narrow margin for turning a profit on this film. Like, they weren't wrong. They didn't need to spend that money. But Sharon Stone, to her credit, to her everlasting credit, was so convinced that this movie would reach another level, and she ended up being right, despite its weaknesses. She had DiCaprio paid from her salary. Now, I understand in Hollywood, they're all making millions of dollars. I get that. I understand they are not like regular people. This is not normal. But if you're paid $4 million for a movie in salary in 1995, and you pay somewhere between $500,000 and $750,000 to ensure that Leonardo DiCaprio is in this film if he wants to be, you're doing something that not that many other people are going to do. Doesn't happen that often. So she wanted him, and she got him, and she literally put her money where her mouth was. And DiCaprio has talked about this many times, that is one of the nicest things to this day that anybody in the movie business ever did. And you think about him, he's so young back then, even having been an Oscar nominee, even with The Basketball Diaries, which is also kind of a cult film for many people. Mark Wahlberg was in that as well, based on Jim Carroll's memoirs. But when you're that young, and somebody who is already an established A-list star goes that far out of their way to say, we need this person to be in this movie, I mean, that's really something. So DiCaprio has always gone out of his way to praise her. And, you know, there was a story that he used to send her a Christmas gift every year. I don't really think that's true, because he kind of said, not really. Said, but anytime he's asked about it, it's a story that he likes to tell, and Sharon has talked about it too. It's just, there's so much negative stuff that has happened in Hollywood, whether it's now, whether it's the 90s, that's like a rare, almost heartwarming story. And DiCaprio is great. He's great in this film. He has good chemistry with her, and there was some, there's a couple of moments where it looks like it might be a romance. Man, Leo was living good anyway, but yeah, my man, little Denzel from American Gangster, my man. But he's really good. His scenes with Russell Crowe sing. His scenes with Gene Hackman, especially their last scene, just great, like great acting from both guys. Gene could have easily taken this movie off. He could have easily just reached into his bag of tricks and played the character, straightforward villain, but he gives you another reminder, as if you need to know. It's kind of like with Robert Duvall, as if we needed to know that Gene Hackman was incapable of not giving his best effort, even in absolute garbage like Loose Cannons from 1990 with Dan Aykroyd. Hackman was authentic in everything. And DiCaprio gives a terrific performance. And Russell Crowe walks away with the movie. He walks away with the movie. So I remember, I think it was in 2022 that Quick and the Dead had a successful run on Netflix. It might have even cracked the top 5 in the US. When you have a movie that especially young people who stream and are always interested, if they see a familiar face, let's see what this is. The Quick and the Dead had a very successful run on Netflix, and you would see those stories pop up on your phone, forgotten Gene Hackman film or something like that. And it was The Quick and the Dead. And so a new generation of fans, often young people seeing it for the first time, were fans said, this is terrific. It is certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, just barely. It's at 61%, which means, if you want to get stupid, if a couple of people file reviews and it goes to 59, then it'll be rotten. But The Quick and the Dead is a super entertaining film, even though there are moments which you might call a little bit of heartbreak and heartache. There are a lot of laughs and just great performances and virtuoso camera work and virtuoso filmmaking from Sam Raimi. And you see why. This is one of the movies that ultimately got him the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. Remember, he directed the first 3 Spider-Man movies proper, even the third one, which wasn't good. They couldn't figure out the script, and they ended up with the character of Venom. They kind of fucked that up, I thought. But Sam Raimi is, to me, a kind of undersold, great filmmaker. The Gift with Cate Blanchett and Keanu Reeves, among others, a terrific film. And A Simple Plan. A Simple Plan from 1998, a spectacular dramatic thriller. And this is a key film for Raimi, because even though it didn't really do that well at the box office, it showed that he was willing to try something different and really, as I say, empty the bag of tricks, use every possible tool at his disposal to make the best film he could and to entertain audiences, particularly, though, by assembling that unbelievable cast. And props once more to Sharon Stone for securing the services of one Leonardo DiCaprio. I'll spare you the long-winded wrap-up as we now approach 6:30 on Tuesday night, March 10th, and I hope you have a great rest of your night. We've had some terrific weather here, it must be said, after this just horrible winter. Finally getting some nice days, 70 degrees, 65 today. So have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday evening, and I will see you all again real soon. Peace.